Good afternoon and welcome to Rogues Reads. See, the whole menagerie is here with me right now. Actually, they were here first, in fact, before I sat down. Alright. So, yeah, buddy, sit down. Alright, well, I'm Renee. I'm the children's librarian at Salem Public Library in Salem, Ohio. I think I've got my camera a little weird there. Okay, that's better. Alright, and this is Rogues Reads. This is our virtual book club for kids in 4th to 8th grade, and we are reading The Genius Files, Never Say Genius by Dan Gutman. This is book 2 of the series. If you are just now joining us, I recommend that you go back a few weeks and start with book 1 and get caught up that way. These books are available on Hoopla, which you can access with your library card. So you can get a copy of it to either catch up or to read along with me. I highly recommend it. It's a great way to improve your own reading skills or just keep them sharp. What are you doing? Sorry, my animals are being a little obnoxious. I'm trying to get her to just lay down and take a nap. Okay, so we are following Coke and Pep's adventure across the United States on their way to Washington, D.C. for their aunt's wedding on July 4th. They're getting these mysterious ciphers, and the last one they found, they were supposed, you know, they're supposed to be, was it the Greensboro Diner, July 20, or June 25th, I think, or no, July 3rd. I'm going to completely forget it. I should have written it down. But they are trying to figure, they're getting these clues to meet somebody somewhere, and they're trying to figure out where. When we left them on Friday, they had been trapped by Archie Clone in Disaster Transport, an old roller coaster at Cedar Point, which does not exist anymore. But then he tried to freeze them to death with ice cream, which is really kind of sick, actually. These are some bad people that are after them. But they escaped and are back with their parents and off for another adventure, continuing across Ohio. So let's see what they can get into today. This is The Genius Files, Never Say Genius by Dan Gutman. So big thanks to Dan Gutman and HarperCollins Publishing for allowing us to use this book in this way. And this is Chapter 12, Duct Tape and Rock and Roll. Coke and Pep were still in a state of shocked disbelief as the RV pulled out of the huge Cedar Point parking lot. Maya and Bones had told them they would be safe until they got to Washington, and then this happened. Every time they let down their guard, Coke thought, every time they took a deep breath and relaxed a little, something terrible happened. Maybe they would never be safe. Maybe these lunatics would be chasing them for the rest of their lives. So how were the roller coasters? Mrs. McDonald asked excitedly. Did you have an awesome time? Yeah, Coke replied without enthusiasm. Awesome. Awesome, mumbled Pepsi. Their parents were disappointed. They had devoted the whole day to doing something just for the kids, but it didn't seem to have made the kids happy. They just sat in the back of the RV silently. Dr. McDonald figured that after riding a dozen roller coasters and being dropped, flipped, spun, and thrown every which way, maybe the twins' brains were a little out of whack. It was getting past dinner time, and Dr. McDonald pulled into Cedar Point Camper Village, a few miles away in Sandusky. The campground featured a shuffleboard court, a game room, and an outdoor pool, but all Coke and Pep wanted to do was sleep. They didn't even want dinner. Their parents went to the snack bar to get something for themselves. Having gone to bed so early, Coke woke up at 5 a.m. before anyone else in the family. He pulled on a pair of jeans and wandered outside. The campground was quiet. It was peaceful. Nobody else was awake. The only thing open was the game room, so Coke went in. It was a tiny room with just 3 arcade games in it, a shoot-'em-up called Kill Them All, a driving game called Pedal to the Metal, and an old Miss Pac-Man machine. Despite the hour, the games were plugged in and turned on, playing their attract mode. That's the screen display that is shown when nobody is playing an arcade game. The idea is to attract the next player, or more specifically, the next quarter. Kill Them All looked interesting. The screen showed guys in camouflage blowing away an army of zombies with machine guns. Insert coin flashed in the middle of the screen. Coke stepped up to the console and reached into his pocket. He didn't have any money with him. The coin return was empty. He pushed the start button for the heck of it on the off chance that the last player had walked away in the middle of the game. Instantly, this flashed on the screen. Oh, that weird Another code. This one, I think it's pretty easy though. Well, it didn't take an encryption expert or his sister to figure out that EKOC was Coke backward, and Coke was pretty sure those letters were not referring to the soft drink. In a few seconds, they were replaced by this message in bright blue glowing letters. There's the second one. WBUAZ, I think that's a 0, maybe it's an O, HYY. It flashed just once and disappeared in a simulated puff of smoke, but Coke had already memorized it. He ran back to the RV and woke up his sister. "I think we got another cipher," he whispered in her ear. "Where?" Pep asked, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "On the screen of a video game in the game room." Coke took Pep's notebook and wrote the letters out. WBUAOHYY. Quietly, so they wouldn't wake their parents, the twins tiptoed outside to sit at the picnic table next to their RV. "It looks a little like the call letters of a radio station," Pep said as she examined the message. "Too many letters," Coke told her. "Radio stations are always WHYY or WCBS, stuff like that." "You say you saw this on an arcade game screen?" Pep asked. "How do you know it isn't the name of the person who has the high score or something like that?" Before it flashed this message, Coke told her, it was flashing EKOC over and over again. "My name backward. I know it's a message for me." Pep looked at the letters more closely. Obviously, they didn't mean anything spelled backward. It didn't seem to be an anagram. Every second, third, or fourth letter meant nothing. The consecutive Y's made her think YY could be part of the message, but nothing else seemed to fit. She tried all the usual codes she knew, but none of them worked. This was a tough one. The sun was peeking through the trees. People were starting to emerge from their tents and RVs to begin their day. And suddenly Pep got it. "Oh, it's simple," she said excitedly. "This is a half-reversed alphabet." Pep took the pen from her brother and wrote out the alphabet in 2 lines. Let's see how she did that. "I don't get it," Coke said. Pep drew a line under the cipher. WBUAOHYY. "If you break the 26 letters of the alphabet into 2 lines of 13 letters," Pep said, "each letter is directly above or below another letter. The W is below the J, so the first letter of the message could be J." "That's true," Coke said. "The second letter of the message would have to be O because B is above O." "Right," Pep said. "And the third letter is H and the fourth letter is N." "John!" Coke exclaimed. So WBUA probably meant John. They continued. O was directly below B, so the next letter was B. H was above U, Y was above L, so OHYY meant bull. John Bull. WBUAOHYY meant John Bull. "You're really good at this, you know," Coke admitted. His sister beamed. It wasn't often that she received a compliment from her brother. "Everybody's good at something," she replied modestly. "The question becomes," Coke asked, "who is John Bull?" The door to their RV opened, and Dr. McDonald came out in his pajamas and slippers. "You two are certainly up early," he said. Pep hid her notebook behind her back. "Hey, Dad," said Coke, "did you ever hear of anybody named John Bull?" "John Bull," Dr. McDonald said, searching his memory. "Yeah, but John Bull isn't a person." "Okay, what is John Bull?" Coke asked. "John Bull is a train," Dr. McDonald replied. "It was one of the first steam locomotives in the world. It was built in the 1830s, I think." He was right. Dr. McDonald taught American history at San Francisco State University, and it was hard to stump him on anything about the Industrial Revolution. He'd written books on the subject. Coke and Pep glanced at each other, puzzled expressions on their faces. Neither of them could fathom why they would receive a secret message about a train. "Why do you want to know about John Bull?" their father asked. "I received a mysterious coded message from a video game in the game room," Coke replied. "It says John Bull." "You kids never cease to amaze me," said Dr. McDonald, shaking his head. And he went back inside the RV to brush his teeth and get dressed. Pep turned to the previous page in her notebook and added to her list. July 3rd, 2 p.m., Greensboro lunch counter, John Bull. I actually figured this one out from that point, so hopefully you guys can figure this one out too. "There must be some connection between the Greensboro lunch counter and that train," she said to her brother. "But what?" "I guess we'll just have to wait for the next cipher." How far are we from Washington now?" Pep asked as they pulled out of the campground and got back on the road. Mrs. McDonald looked it up on the GPS. 423 miles, she said. We're getting there. So where are we going today? Asked Coke. The coolest place in the world, his father said mysteriously. He slipped a Rolling Stone CD into the slot and drove a little over 40 miles, mostly on Route 2 east, following the contour of Lake Erie. And then, quite suddenly, there was a sign that travelers of a certain mindset find hard to resist. Oh, probably one for Mom. Avon, Ohio, duct tape capital of the world. I did not know that. Ben, stop the RV, Mrs. McDonald shouted. Pull over! The RV screeched to a halt. The refrigerator door flew open and a jar of Smucker's strawberry jam fell out and hit the floor. You gotta be kidding me, Coke said, throwing up his hands. This is the coolest place in the world? Do we have to go to a museum devoted to duct tape? As the RV sat on the shoulder of the road, Mrs. McDonald leafed through her Ohio guidebook. Relax, she said when she found the page she was looking for. They don't have a duct tape museum here. That would be ridiculous. Well, that's a relief, Pep said. But they have duct tape sculptures, Mrs. McDonald said excitedly. A duct tape parade, a duct tape fashion show, and a mascot called Duct Tape Duck. Doesn't that sound cool? No, the twins said in unison. Although, to be completely honest, it did sound pretty cool. Kids, Dr. McDonald said, this is the beauty of traveling cross-country. You never know what you're going to stumble on. This is the adventure. I certainly wouldn't drive 2,000 miles to visit the duct tape capital of the world, but here we are. We found it. Something brought us here. It's almost like magic or fate. Duct tape is dumb, Coke said. I say we get out of here. All in favor, say aye. Aye, said Pep. This is not a democracy. We must stop here, Mrs. McDonald said with finality. And when Mrs. Bridget McDonald said something with finality, it was final. They drove all around the small town of Avon looking for duct tape sculptures with no success. The kids sat in the back bored. You know, they say you can solve just about any problem with duct tape, Dr. McDonald said as he leaned forward to read the street signs in the distance. Except when the problem is that you're stuck in the duct tape capital of the world, Coke said grimly. Glumly. Is it duct tape or duct tape? Mrs. McDonald wondered out loud. I believe it's duct tape, said Dr. McDonald. It's mainly used to help seal ducks. I think it's duct tape, Dad, Pep said. You use it to help duck seals. Duck seals? Asked Mrs. McDonald. Is that what you get when a duck and a seal mate? No, if a seal is flying in your direction, you need to duck, Pep explained. That's what duck seals means. Seals don't fly, Coke pointed out. Maybe it's called duct tape because the guy who invented it would throw it at people and they had to duck to avoid being hit by the flying tape, suggested Mrs. McDonald. Who cares if it's duct tape or duct tape? Coke said, his arms crossed in front of him. It's tape. It's boring. Why are we stopping here? The conversation continued along those lines until Dr. McDonald turned onto a street called Just Imagine Drive, where there was an office building with a sign out front. Henkel Consumer Adhesives, headquarters of duct products. This must be the place, Mrs. McDonald said, getting out her laptop and camera. They pulled into the only parking space big enough for an RV and went inside. There was a pretty receptionist sitting behind the desk. May I help you? Yes, Mrs. McDonald said politely. Can you tell us where is the duct tape parade and what time is the next duct tape fashion show? Oh, I'm terribly sorry, the receptionist said, but none of that is going on today. What? Mrs. McDonald exclaimed. We drove all the way from California to see people dressed up in duct tape. That wasn't exactly true, but it sounded good. Mrs. McDonald was clearly agitated. She put her hands on her hips to demonstrate her annoyance. Calm down, Bridge, said Dr. McDonald. I am calm, Mrs. McDonald said, but this town advertises itself as the duct tape capital of the world. We've been driving all over town, and I haven't seen any duct tape anywhere. We have an annual duct tape festival on Father's Day weekend, the receptionist explained. That's when we crown the duct tape dad of the year. It must be really exciting, Coke said sarcastically. I wish to speak to the manager, Mrs. McDonald announced. He's at a conference in Denver, said the receptionist as she reached into the drawer next to her. Do they have duct tape conferences? Coke asked. Do they actually sit around talking about duct tape? The receptionist pulled out a small roll of duct tape from the drawer. I'm terribly sorry, she said. All I can offer you is this complimentary roll of duct tape. Mrs. McDonald snatched the tape out of her hand and stormed out the door in a huff. The rest of the family followed. Back in the RV, she flipped the roll of duct tape over her shoulder toward the twins. Duck, she shouted, tape! Don't tell me she's funny. Hush. Do you think she's funny? Does she tell good jokes? You don't know? Coke played with the roll of duct tape as the RV pulled onto Interstate 90, heading east out of Avon. Dr. McDonald ejected the Rolling Stones and put on a Jimi Hendrix CD, nodding his head with the music. Mrs. McDonald passed out sandwiches for lunch she had made that morning. After 20 minutes or so on the highway, the tall buildings of a big city came into view in the distance. "What's that, Dad?" Pep asked. "Cleveland, Ohio." "Cleveland," Coke asked. "Are you taking us to an Indians game?" I would be on board for that. "No," Dr. McDonald replied and left it at that. He had a little smile on his face. He got off the road at exit 174B. A sign said Cleveland Memorial Shoreway. The twins tried to figure out where they were going as they passed by a little airport near the Lake Erie waterfront. Soon, a few blocks ahead, Pep spotted a large glass building that was shaped like a pyramid. Anybody know where they are? "What's that?" Pep asked. "Only the coolest place in the world," Dr. McDonald replied, and as they got closer, a sign came into view. "Rock and Roll Hall of Fame." "All right," both kids shouted. The twins were surprised that their father, a serious student of American history, would get excited about a museum devoted to rock music. But Dr. McDonald explained to them that rock and roll is more than just a style of music. It's changed the way we live, the way we dress, how we are entertained, and our attitudes on so many issues. He pulled the RV into the parking lot and climbed out with a spring in his step, whistling "I Love Rock and Roll" by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Everybody was excited. Mrs. McDonald brought along her camera and notepad. Coke threw the roll of duct tape into his backpack and slung it over his shoulder. Pep didn't bring anything. She hopped out of the RV and began to sing as she skipped across the parking lot. I am not going to sing. Okay. "Hit me with your pet shark. Come on and hit me with your pet shark." "Wait a minute," Coke interrupted his sister. "What did you just say?" "I said hit me with your pet shark." "That's not hit me with your pet shark, you dope," Coke told her. "It's hit me with your best shot." "It is not," Pep said defensively. "It is too. Mom." "I'm afraid your brother is right, honey," Mrs. McDonald told Pep. "It's hit me with your best shot. I remember that song. It was by Pat Benatar." Pep, who had gone through her entire 13 years thinking the song went "hit me with your pet shark," had never been so humiliated. She broke down in tears. Coke couldn't help but laugh, but both parents came to Pep's side. All right, have you guys ever done that where you thought the lyrics were one thing and they were completely different? Yeah, that is kind of embarrassing. "Don't feel bad, sweetie," Dr. McDonald said as he put his arm around Pep. "People misinterpret song lyrics all the time. When I was a kid, there was a song called "When a Man Loves a Woman" by Percy Sledge, and I always thought he was singing "When a Man Loves a Walnut." "Really?" Pep said, crying and laughing at the same time. "You know that song "Blowin' in the Wind" by Bob Dylan?" asked Mrs. McDonald. "When I was a kid, I thought he was singing "The Ants Are My Friends, Blowin' in the Wind." Ants, A-N-T-S, as in the little bug, instead of answer. "I didn't." "Oh, you made that up," Pep said, wiping her eyes. "I didn't really," her mother said. "I still think that's what it sounds like." "Come to think of it," Coke said, trying to cheer up his sister, "hit me with your pet shark is better than hit me with your best shot." Pep snapped out of it, and the family entered the huge building in a good mood. Dr. McDonald bought the tickets and looked over the map in the museum. There were 7 floors connected by escalators, with 5 little theaters showing videos. Everyone had his or her own interests. The grown-ups wanted to see the exhibits devoted to blues, country, and rockabilly music. The kids wanted to head straight for rap, punk, and hip-hop. Pep had become a Beatles freak after playing Rock Band with her friends back home. Coke preferred heavy metal. Mrs. McDonald wanted to learn about Jimi Hendrix. Dr. McDonald was more interested in Les Paul and the invention of the electric guitar. There was so much stuff. It would take up most of the afternoon to see the whole place. Rather than walking the museum as a foursome, everyone agreed they could cover more ground in a shorter period of time if they split up. "The museum closes at 5:30, Mrs. McDonald told the twins. "Meet you at the bench out front at that time. Don't be late." The kids took off in one direction, and the parents went in another. "Do you think we'll be safe in here?" Pep asked her brother. "Every time we go off without Mom and Dad, something happens." "They finally figured it out. Maybe they need to stick with their parents." "You think they will?" "Probably not." "What could possibly happen in here?" Coke replied. "You're being paranoid. There are lots of cool places mentioned in this book, but the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is probably the coolest. If you love music, you should definitely go there at some point in your life. And you know, I've lived in Ohio my entire life and I have never been there. I need to make a trip once we can get out and travel again. The twins jumped from exhibit to exhibit, sometimes looking at every object very closely and other times skipping them entirely. The museum is filled with photos, posters, videos, handwritten lyrics to songs, stage costumes and guitars, and the cars of the stars. You can put on headphones and listen to just about every rock song ever recorded. Look, there's Jim Morrison's Cub Scout uniform, Coke pointed out. Who's Jim Morrison? Pep asked. Some guy who died. There are no statues or plaques of the musicians who have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Instead, there's a long, curving wall with all their signatures. By 5 o'clock, Coke and Pep had been through most of the exhibits, taking the escalators higher and higher until they had reached the top floor. We should probably head back down, Pep said. Mom and Dad told us to meet them on the bench out front at 5:30. Relax, Coke told his sister. Hey, check this out. There was a door off to one side where most people would not see it. The word recording was above the door, and next to the letters was a little red light bulb that was lit up. It's a studio, Pep said. They probably record music or commercials in there. Let's go in, Coke said. We're not allowed in there, said Pep. Says who? Coke replied. I don't see any do not enter sign. It's a museum. It's open to the public. We paid our admission. Come on. The red light, I mean, that means stop, right? Don't do that. He pulled open the door. Reluctantly, Pep followed. They were in a tiny room now, not much bigger than an old-fashioned telephone booth. There was another door on the other side. The first door clicked shut behind them. I don't like this, Pep said nervously. Shh, her brother said. He pushed on the other door and it opened into a larger room dominated by a huge control panel with hundreds of dials, knobs, and switches on it. Neither of the twins had ever been in a recording studio before. It almost looked like the cockpit of a plane. There were 3 large chairs in front of the control panel, all of them swiveled around, as if on cue. There were 3 people sitting in the chairs. The 2 bowler dudes and Mrs. Higgins. Not them again. I thought they were done with those guys. That is where we are going to stop today. They are in a tiny recording studio at the very top of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the bowler dudes and Mrs. Higgins. If it's not Archie Clone, it's Mrs. Higgins. I don't know. These are just bad news. That's where we're going to stop for today. We'll pick up tomorrow with chapter 13. Activities. If you've got any duct tape at home, and a lot of you probably do, make sure you ask your grown-ups before you snag their duct tape, because they may have it reserved for something. But if you got some duct tape, I will post some links to some duct tape creations. There's some really fun things you can make out of duct tape. If you make one of them, share it with me. I'd love to see it. So just, put a picture in the comments. And I will be back tomorrow with chapter 13 of the Genius Files, Never Say Genius. So Rogue is napping in a sunspot. He doesn't want to read today, apparently. But I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.